Welcome back to Inside Personal Growth. This is Greg Voisen, the host of Inside Personal Growth. And today, joining me from India is Dr. B.S. Ajaikumar. And he has a new book out called Excellence Has No Borders. Good evening to you. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, Greg. Thank you.
Great. Now, what city are you joining us from?
I'm in Bangalore, India.
Bangalore. Okay. He's in Bangalore. And this book and his, for my listeners, just so they know, he is the founder of HCG Network, and you can get that by going to hcgoncology.com to learn more about him. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about him before we get into the podcast. Dr. Ajaikumar is the executive chairman of HealthCare Global Enterprises. He founded HCG to realize his vision of making advanced cancer care accessible to all. He's been a driving force behind HCG's growth since its inception and served as the CEO from 2005 to 2021. His contributions in the field of cancer care in India and his success as a first-generation physician entrepreneur have been widely recognized. He's been awarded the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year Award and the CII Regional Emerging Entrepreneur Award and the BC Roy Award and the Indian Science Monitor. He is also a practicing oncologist in the US and India for over 3 decades, completed his residency training and radiotherapy from the MD Anderson Hospital and Tumor Institute of the University of Texas, and has his residency training in oncology from the University of Virginia Hospital, Charlottesville, where he received his MBBS from St. John's Medical College. Well, it's a pleasure having you on the show and for you to speak about the groundbreaking work that you've done. And I think this book is really kind of a combination of the groundbreaking work and a lot of stories. And, you know, it is some about you and a lot about what you do. And in the introduction of the book, you shared 2 big stories of your life that sparked and nurtured you and gave you a sense of direction, you said. One is your story about losing $22 million and only having $500,000 left, I guess, when you're able to rebuild your life and believe that anything is possible. The other one is the story of your son that taught you the fine art of detachment during times of crisis. And obviously, being an Indian descent in Eastern culture, you know, that detachment element is part of who you are. So your son was teaching you that. If you could share these stories with our listeners, and how this kind of influenced you to kind of keep going, to have that motivation to keep going.
Greg, as you said, that's right. I feel throughout my life journey, as you will read in the book, I'm always been a positive person. I always look at glass being half full. And, my journey in US, going through the training in MD Anderson, training in medical oncology, and seeing the advanced cases, which came from all over the world. Actually, MD Anderson was like a last hope. People would come, and I remember treating patients with phase 1 drugs, very lot of toxicity, but still they said my body is an experiment. So these were all the things which gave me that, the motivation to do things which are very much needed. So along with that journey, of course, I wanted to make sure that, when I traveled across India in 1980s, saw the great gap between how we were treating patients in US and India, I felt that I need to come back. And when I look at the question you asked me, about the 20 million loss. I thought, I never went to any entity for saying, I'm doing this great job, I'm putting up this center in India, please give me donation. I don't have the DNA. I thought I should do everything on my own. So with this in mind, I had, built this kind of fortune over multiple decades. But unfortunately, in 2000, with the bubble and I lost the money, it was very easy for me to give up and go back to my practice. And that is what at one time I remember my wife telling, maybe you have to go back, forget your dreams about India. But I became more determined. I knew that there is no going back on it. Whatever the issues are, I will take the challenge and do it. And that has been a remarkable journey. I put the pieces together, slowly built my life back. And, in 2003-4, I moved back, somehow convinced my family, moved back. And part of the reason I had this thought process and approach and challenge is because of my son. Because my son, when he was born in 1992, we made a diagnosis of Duchenne muscular dystrophy. I took him all over US, Canada for treatment, and there's no treatment. In fact, I remember at the university in Iowa, he being told that the expert doctor told me that, doctor, don't waste your time. He's not going to live beyond 16. But as an approach, having been an oncologist, I said, okay. I told him, well, let us accept. Let us see what we can do better on that. So here we are today with all the things. I did some research and also, looked at some form of therapy and the way we approached him. Today he is 32. Is the longest survivor in Duchenne, one of the longest survivors, doing with good quality of life. But what happened to him 4 years ago when he had a fall and, went into septic shock, and when he had, multi-organ failure. And, obviously, these kids are very immunosuppressed because they are on long-time steroids and very difficult to manage. Very few people survive from this kind of episodes. But we pulled him out. He was on a ventilator. Actually, I managed him at home in a home ICU because of the adrenaline crisis. A lot of things happened. I learned a lot. I remember his blood pressure being like 60/0, 184 heart rate. But we pulled him out and asked him one question. What were you thinking when all of this was happening? He said, I knew somehow you'll pull me out. That was his answer, So
That's great. That's great.
So,
it's they say like father, like son, right? So, he has this positive mental attitude. Here he is, 32, wasn't supposed to survive all that. What a wonderful story, and what a wonderful thing for a father to be so involved in, his care and understanding, and your wife as well, I'm sure. And you state in chapter 2 that there is no greater nightmare for a helpless 5-year-old than an elder brother sibling who is a super achiever. And on this, you're referring to your brother, Amar. What experience did you have living under his shadow if he's like the super achiever?
As being the second son, my brother being a very, like you say, super achiever, at the age of 5, he could quote Shakespearean plays, he could take part in drama, great orator. All of that, had an influence on my dad, and he was a super achiever, and I had to grow under his shadow. But I felt, the issue was I was underestimated in the family. I was like, maybe they thought I will not achieve anything. My mom at one time was telling maybe he'll become a sportsman or work in some place. Something, it was a put down effect, which I don't think they meant it that way, but I heard these conversations. But I was quite good. But some of the instances where he humiliated me, my brother, helped me a lot. That is where, I see sometimes there are turning points in your life. When he did that I'm no good, I took it as a challenge. And I remember in my 10th grade, I overtook him in the grade. That immediately my family woke up. my God, he's good. So suddenly my father comes to me and says, oh, your astrology says you're going to be a great doctor. So suddenly they recognized me, which was good. But living under the shadow for years, while it is difficult, I felt it has really given me some insights into life and made me more confident and challenge the system. That is where, I kind of, me being an entrepreneur today is partly because of that. I'd like to take risks and challenge the system. That is where it has helped me.
Wow. Well, that's a great story. Now, in chapter 4, you speak about working temporarily in a nursing home where you ended up working for just 2 days when you had to quit because your sense of purpose. And I think this is an important element here about this book and about your drive is somebody defining their purpose in life and why are they waking up in the morning and what are they doing it for and who are they serving? What are the factors that led you to quit your job? And what advice can you give to the listeners who are in kind of the same situation? There's a lot of listeners out there who listen to my show because they want to be inspired. They want to do something different in their life. They want to transform. They're seekers. They're seeking something new and different in their life. What advice would you have them? Would you give them?
See, on this matter, when I came to US as a fully qualified doctor, I was waiting for my residency post. Usually the residency post starts in June, July. And my brother said, while you're waiting, why don't you maybe earn some money, go to Boston area, work in a nursing home. I had still not got the residency post. Always you feel insecure, of course, and here you are dependent on the brother. So I said, okay, I'll try. But when I went there, I was doing some job which is not even done by nurses. And I said, is this what it is, life about? Should I really compromise what I am capable and do this? I said, certainly I did not come for this. Well, in case I cannot get my residency, maybe I can go back to India for a year and come back later. I can do more service there actually as a doctor. So with this in mind, even though, US was, obviously people looked at US, people wanted to come, I was ready to go back. So that is when I called my brother and said, look, I had a Greyhound ticket, a round trip actually. So I said, look, I still have the round trip. I'm coming back. I don't want to be here. I just cannot feel like I belong here to do this kind of work. However great it is, I don't belong. So what I want to tell people is the introspection is very important. Introspection to see who we are, what we are, why we have come. And based on that, we have to take a call. The call may be a difficult one. The easy route is not that, you can take an easy route. That's there available. Okay, I'll work here, earn some money till whatever happens. But I said, that is not me. Whatever the difficulties are, I am going to do what I want to do. Not, this is why I came here. I want to be an expert in oncology. If that is what happens, I will do it. So with that determination, I moved back. Unfortunately, I got a post in University of Virginia. And then, of course, the Mecca of oncology, MD Anderson. And that too, the MD Anderson was amazing story. They told me, look, we don't have any post for 3 years. And if you want, you can come for interview. Again, I took a Greyhound from Chicago and went all the way. And when I landed in Houston, when they interviewed me for 3 days, they were very impressed, I suppose. Because of that, they said, not only we are going to offer you a post right away, but we'll give you a big jump in your salary, in your stipend, fellowship program. So those were those give you that confidence. Man, I must be good, to be recognized by MD Anderson. So suddenly, that changes your whole perspective and gives you that self-confidence and then to move on. And then that is why I always say, we can put me in a place in Alaska, in the middle of nowhere, I will come out alive. even though, the Brooks range, people say they don't come out alive if they're thrown there. But I always felt I come out ahead. And I used to play tennis a lot, and people, I won the city doubles championship where I was near Chicago. And my friend Ray and me, we always used to say, I used to really go after him in singles. He used to say, why is it you are down 5 love and love 40, you're still fighting as though you're going to win? I said, yeah, every time, why not? I may come back.
Well, it's interesting because within that, when you quit a job, there's an element, obviously, of risk, and no money coming in, you've got to find something else. And it just shows me that along with your faith in that you're going to come out okay, you are willing to take risks. And, in chapter 5, you speak about the situation that made you change your choice of specialty in medical studies. You originally set off, and I just had a heart surgeon on here speaking, you wanted to be a cardiologist or a cardiac surgeon, thoracic surgeon. And because of that, your favorite subject in medical school, you were very good at it. Can you let the listeners know what was the new specialty and what made you switch to a different specialty when really your focus was cardiology?
Yeah, as a medical student in those years, we are talking about early 70s, oncology was not looked upon as a good subject because there were no definite treatments. And we were not exposed to that much. But as a cardiology, everybody was craving for cardiologists. And, you're a cardiologist means, your parents will feel good. My son is a cardiologist. But I always liked cardiology, listening to the murmurs and telling people what it is, making a diagnosis. But when I came to final year, and, I saw one of the most amazing things, a young girl with a rheumatic heart disease. And she also had myeloid leukemia. And that is when I realized, my God, she may not live long. This was in India. So this kind of, then of course I got into rotation. I never saw her. I would assume she died. But when I went to US in my rotating internship at Virginia, I saw again people with lot of pain and lot of, no treatments, morphine. So I asked my professor, look, what is going on in cancer care? Why is this, and it was an evolving field. That is when I decided, what is heart? Heart is only a pump. What is cancer? Something which happens within your body. The challenges are much more. How do we diagnose cancer and what may be the treatment? And there is so much research you can do. That is what prompted me to really even look at MD Anderson as a dedicated cancer center and go there, involved in the extensive research in terms of developmental therapeutics. So what really prompted me to look at oncology is a challenge. And what I felt is that oncology patients are not treated properly. We've used the words victims, and we said terminal care, hospice care, palliative care. So many terminologies were used, and even the society was using cancer word. If there is corruption, nepotism in the society, people said it's a cancer of the society. Yeah. So cancer had such a name. For me, it was, man, I should take up this challenge and really understand this so-called deadly disease and contribute to that. So that is how I really took up the challenge.
Well, it's interesting because when my son got chronic myelogenous leukemia, and he was 21 years old. It usually doesn't happen, as you know, to younger people. And we went he was at UCLA at the time. I was a student, actually, at the time. And we went to City of Hope, and they said, well, you can do all of these radiation treatments and so on. And he was 21. He was just 21 at the time. Or you can take this new drug called Gleevec.
Yeah.
And we put him on Gleevec. He chose the Gleevec instead of it. It is now, let's see, how many years later? He is 41 next month.
Wow.
So 20 years he's been on, I think he's on Sprycel now,
Yeah.
not Gleevec. But it just shows you the advancement that's been made. You're right. It's a chronic, many of the leukemias can be treated with good treatment and a good
Correct.
regimen. And I also believe in the fact that diet and exercise and all kinds of things play a major role in all of that as well. Now, you
I'm
shared
so glad he's doing good. That's great news. Good.
he is. I have 2 grandchildren, which I didn't know I
Wow.
was going to have. So I'm very happy for that. You shared a lot of medical stories in the book, and one was a story of an African-American girl who had sepsis. Tell us a story about this patient and why you consider what happened to her as your mistake, you called it. Sepsis is something that people can get, right?
No, I think as a doctor, you may spend, half an hour with the patient, 30 minutes, but the patient always lives with you. See, you always wonder, could I have done something different? And, when the patient goes through the sepsis, septic shock, so many things happen, and you lose a patient, you remember their smiling face, you remember, their trust in you, they come with their hope, and you put all your effort, you go to bed, you think of them, but you feel when you lose somebody, somehow it sticks with you. Doesn't mean you are attached, but you feel always, is there something else I could have done? And some of the initial phases I was going through with this patient, where I was seeing so many sick patients, and whenever you lose somebody, it is something, it was used to kind of really be with me. I won't say it would haunt me, but it be with me. It is like, more, I could have done something else. Should I have consulted some other specialist? Should I have put together a plan? Should I have done some other insertion of catheter? So many things come across. And this is something, people feel, Craig, honestly, after years, you get over it. You don't. Each patient is precious to you. Whether that is why I suppose some of us become doctors. And it is never each life you lose or each life you gain, you learn something from it and you live with it.
Well, and this doctor that was on, who's a world famous heart surgeon, Simon Malthus, who's now here in the U.S., started in Canada, but 160 articles written and just phenomenal. He was saying that, during the pandemic, which I don't know about India right now, but it has subsided tremendously here, that, heart surgeries were pushed off. It was kind of like, well, let's want to wait till after the pandemic. And I make this commentary for this reason, because he said, we would lose patients, or we didn't know if it was COVID or if it was something else, right? They needed the heart surgery. So many of them would come in with conditions, or they come in with ailments. Did you experience this just frenetic challenge in your clinics during COVID? And I'm saying it's not that it's completely gone, maybe in India, but here in the US, we are seeing huge reduction in it. How was it for you to operate during that time?
Yeah, in India, we have had 2 waves. Even now, of course, the COVID is receding and it's almost life back to normal. But in the first wave, nobody expected how it will do. And you may know that India went to complete lockdown.
Yeah.
And with that, there was no transportation, no patients were coming. Literally, the whole oncology patients would not come. And only those with great difficulty, because there was no public transportation, even to come by cars, it was difficult. There were a lot of issues. So what happened was nearly 20-25% of the cases we did some data collection, came in after the first wave with more advanced diseases. Obviously, they missed out several months. So that became an issue. But as we were dealing with this, the second wave came, which was really devastating. And we had to convert some of our COVID patients we have to manage. At one time, I remember, this was about a year ago. We had almost 45 patients on ventilator, and we didn't have any more ventilators available, and we had many more patients coming in. So it was a crisis management. We were all up in the night trying to pull a ventilator from there, fly and ventilator from other center. But it was like a MASH unit, and it was just, amazing how people came together. There were rumors oxygen is going to run out. Media was talking about oxygen. I was getting calls from media, what is going to happen? And there were a lot of people, calling to say, can you give me a bed? Friends, relatives, people from all walks of life, my neighbors, their relatives. So it was like a once in a life experience. But I am happy to say that, the majority of the people came out. Well, even in oncology patients, we always felt they will have more mortality, but it was not so. It was equal to the rest, and it was actually not even equal to the rest, maybe even less because of various reasons. But the assumption that cancer patients will have more mortality with COVID because of the immunosuppressed situation was not true. It did not happen.
That's very interesting.
It was amazing.
Yeah. I especially somebody from India saying that, because you never know in today's world when the media puts something out, how much is true and how much is propaganda, right? I mean, look at this thing today with Ukraine. Yes, we know it's happening, but how much can we depend on? And, in chapter 9, you state that philosophy is about seeking knowledge and about the fundamental aspects of life. And you state further that there is a lot you can learn about life from someone who is facing imminent death or finitude. I know this last 2 years, I lost 2 brothers. So it got me to think about finitude a lot more realistically. This led you to your learning towards what you call, what is it, the only philosophy? How do you say it?
Onco philosophy.
Onco philosophy. Talk to the audience about the concept of onco philosophy. What is that?
We all say philosophy can be read from other great philosophers. Philosophy is all about watching and learning from people, in my view. Like when you talk about people like Socrates, they all didn't read books. They learned from watching people, habits, looking at it. For me, when I look at an oncology patient, I always used to tell, look, I may be the person giving you advice, consultation, but really I'm learning a lot from you more than what you think, possibly what I am giving you. Because you look at a cancer patient, Greg, imagine a patient who I treated her for a breast cancer patient for almost 8 years. And this was a Sunday afternoon. And finally the disease, when she came to me, it was in the bone, but she lived for 8 years with all the treatments. And then on a Sunday afternoon, her blood pressure was dropping. She was in multi-organ failure, high calcium, but she was still alert. And as I walked into the room, and I just couldn't keep my tears. And as normally they do, family walked out, and I just held her hand, and she just took something and wiped my eye. She is 60/0, she's about to die, and said, "Don't cry, Dr. AJ. You have given me good 8 years of life."
Wow.
This kind of thing, lives with you. Here is a patient consoling the doctor when she's about to die.
Yeah.
And it is, and then another patient, who was that patient thought I could walk on water. She was one of those patients who wanted to do everything in life, like go in cross-country ski. She was from Ireland originally, her family. She wanted to go back, but somebody had told her she has only 6 months to live. But we put together a plan, having trained in MD Anderson. I did a lot of things, and she lived for a long time. And one of the things is I was in India in mid-80s. At that time, she had the disease that progressed into her lung. So my nurse called me to say, look, she's very sick. As soon as you come, you should go and see her. So normally we don't go to the house, but I did go to her house as soon as I arrived back in India. And this is something, I cannot get over. I talked to her and said, maybe tomorrow we can look at some investigational treatment. That he said, no, I just wanted to thank you. In 8 years, I've done everything in life I've planned for, I've achieved. So that night, then she had all waited for me to come. That night she died after I left. So these things, really make you feel learning of, these are philosophies. If you don't learn from that, I felt I'm stupid. I have to learn from this.
And I think
when you look at life in a different way.
I think you said it 15 minutes ago, and I had another doctor on here, Dr. Steve Bazal, emergency room physician, but really would put his patients into hypnosis. And he said the white coat of a doctor and the first words out of their mouth are so important. So, the oncologist can give a patient a report and say, well, you have 6 months to live. Or you could say something like, hey, you're going to live as long as you want to live. We can fight this, right? Versus telling somebody and implanting in their subconscious that they are going to actually pass away and they've only got 6 months, pack your bags, go home, whatever. I can't imagine anything worse a doctor saying to a patient than how they actually treat them at that moment, at that time. And I'm sure you concur with that, right?
Absolutely, Craig. I have had so many patient instances where, we are going along. It is very unfortunate. Patients are doing well, even though they have metastatic disease. But they go for somewhere and the doctor says, whatever reason, oh, your lung is full of disease. Doctor, they go and say, oh, yeah, you may have 6 months to live. They give up. And whatever progress we would have made, everything would be of no good anymore because mentally they would give up. Only 6 months, what the hell, why am I going through all this treatment? I have instances where there is one remarkable instance where in 1974, before I started my practice outside of Chicago, a patient was operated on, a farmer, where he had lung full of disease. The doctor said, look, you have enjoy your last summer. That's it. Close the case. He came to see me in 1980 with a lump under his arm. I said, doctor, I said, what happened here? Looked at it. Please see my records. So I looked at the record. He said, doctor had told me that I have 6 months to live last summer. For last 6 years, I've been waiting for this last summer.
That's a great story. Yeah, and that is the important. The subconscious is so strong and we don't really realize it. The will, like you said, put you in the middle of Alaska and you'll be able to get out alive. As long as you believe you can get out alive, good chances are you're going to get out alive. And so you stay in chapter 13, you tell the story of your journey exploring cancer in India, which we've talked about, and state that the whole trip for you was a philosophical lesson in understanding life. Share with the listeners, if you would, some of the great life lessons that you've learned from this exploration of looking at not heart or being a cardiac surgeon or a cardiologist, but becoming more of an oncologist to treat a disease which literally you believe is completely curable.
Yeah, even if you cannot cure, it's a chronic disease. And for me, when I started looking at India, the reason, what attracted me to India in 1985, when I did the 6 months, travel across India, I saw one baby waiting for 12 hours to get a very primitive form of treatment, a big sarcoma of the stomach. And I saw a lady who had cervix cancer bleeding, being just given away and said, do whatever you want. And 3 weeks later, we treated at our hospital. And here she was waving at me after 3 weeks. much better with no bleeding. So when you look at this, he said, you know what? I am much needed here. This is where I have to come back. Not, I may have affluence, I may have all I want in US, I may have a good life, but that is not why I became a doctor. See, these are the turning points in your life when you look at it. So in spite of odds, in spite of a lot of people, my dad, of course, in 90, he passed away in 99. Before that, he was not at all in favor of me coming back. He saw me, I'm leading a good life. What else you want? Why do you want to come and struggle here? But struggle is in a way is good. You should struggle.
Mm-hmm.
People talk about always happiness and all. In a way, struggle is also a form of happiness. When you know you want to do something in order to achieve, if you struggle, that journey itself is a pleasure because you are doing something with a focus. So what we did with HCG, honestly, Greg, we changed a paradigm shift in a massive country like India, how we approach cancer care. People thought India is a poor country. India cannot have technology. India, only government, few institutions can treat. In private care, you cannot give cancer, particularly high technology. I disproved all of them. I brought in high technology, not only into big cities, but tier 2, tier 3 cities. High linear accelerator, PET scans, genomic labs. What we have shown is cancer doesn't know rich from poor. Cancer can attack anyone. The only way is to treat cancer the right way first time. And so with this kind of technology, we have access to 500 million people HCG today in India. And with that, once we started doing that, there are many people who have followed, fortunately. They said, if HCG can do, if Ajaikumar can do, we can also do. So with that in mind, there are so many linear accelerators, so many PET scans. So it is a great thing. And now we are going into tier 3 cities and all. So, it goes to show, that is why I call it excellence has no borders. Doesn't matter rich or poor. That is whatever. Excellence is excellence. You have to go there and do your excellent treatment. You cannot say you are poor, I'm going to give you inferior form of treatment. Cancer is not going to forgive you. So we have to treat these patients as though they are my own mother, brother, sister, or uncle. You cannot treat them any other way. You have to bridge the gap. That is our Harvard Business School study. When Harvard did a study, they were amazed. How were you able to bridge this gap? We were able to. It is doable.
Well, excellence has no borders. You're right. And I'm so honored to be able to meet you and do the podcast because people like you who have the compassion and dedication for all humanity, all mankind, is so important. And, the thing that's going to heal this world is really going to be empathy. And empathy, the way you want to look at it is empathy and compassion is missing in so many places. And that leads me to my last question. In the last chapter, you speak about India's healthcare system and the state of what you want to see is a value-based healthcare system. What is your vision of this and what needs to change to achieve this in India? Because, in the United States, we have, people say maybe one of the best healthcare systems, one of the most expensive healthcare systems, but I always wonder why we lag so far behind in so many things when we supposedly have the best healthcare system. And there's so much we could talk about with the healthcare system here versus the healthcare system in India. But what do you really envision for India's healthcare system?
See, Greg, US, by the way, has a very good healthcare system, but the cost is very high. That is why the value-based healthcare system makes sense for a country like India. But India is two countries within a country. You have 350 million population, which is almost as big as United States or Europe, which are in the middle class, upper middle class, demanding highest form of healthcare, which can afford. And you have 900 million, which is not there, which is in the lower strata. How do you bridge the gap? How do you even service 300 million is a challenge. So one of the things we have come up is India, by the way, the cost is very low. I can do a PET scan for $300, what costs $2,500 in US.
Yeah.
I can do a CT scan for less than $100, not even $50, which costs, like $500, $800. So we know the cost is very low because of various reasons.
Do you have, pardon me for interrupting, but do you have a large influx of U.S. citizens coming to India to seek healthcare, or no?
No, we don't have US because of the insurance issue. They don't cover. And also there is medical legal issue if something goes wrong, and also people won't like to come here. Okay. But we have a lot of people who come from Africa, Middle East, and other parts of the world. Okay. We ourselves, nearly 20% of our work is international patients. But coming back to this, what is an answer to India, which we advocate, is a universal healthcare, like what we have in US to some extent, with no limits. And it can be achieved. What we have proposed is India is full of youths. 65% are youths in India. So everybody has a cell phone. So we are proposing a tax on the cell phone, as what we call as a health cess tax, which you collect and create an endowment to take care of people. And when I was working in US, I paid a Medicare tax, so which was helping the Medicare people. Like that, we create that kind of a system where everybody is covered. Brazil has done that very well. So we want to use that. That is what we are advocating. But there are some issues why the government has not picked up on that. They have come up with some schemes and all. It's not really working. Majority of the people still have to pay out of pocket. And that is one area where we have to hopefully come to a solution very soon. But I think it will happen in the next few years. There is a lot of interest to change the healthcare system. So we are all putting all our efforts to make this happen, so that, to me, any country to become an advanced country, that is what I wrote, education and health are the most important. If you bring up the education standards and health standards to the level, then you are almost there. So that is where we are missing at this point. By the way, the excellence has no borders name was given by my son-in-law, Eric. And he's the one who came up with that name.
Well, it's a good title for your book. It's also a good title for you. Yes. As a human soul, making his journey through life and having the impact on as many people as you've had. I just want to acknowledge that. And for all my listeners, the thousands of patients that come to HCG in India to be treated, whether they're coming from Africa or they're Indian or whoever they are, it's a huge success story for you. And especially after all the bumps in the road that you went through as a person. And I know you have a new CEO now. I saw the young man in your profiles there. And congratulations on your growth. Congratulations on this book, and to get this message out worldwide, not just, in India, but to have podcasts with people like myself. Because like you said, you can learn from anyone and observing what they're doing. And I think what's important is if this podcast gets in the right hands, somebody hears you and understands you, and who knows, maybe wants to make an investment into HCG, right? Because they see that this is going to expand to 1.3 billion people, right? Or whatever the number is at this point. But thank you, Dr. Ajaikumar. I really appreciate it. You've been a wonderful guest to have on the show. And the book, even though only in PDF form, was a wonderful book. We really appreciate that. And I appreciate you.
I think we have ordered a book. I don't know. It should come to you. Hopefully
it didn't come yet, but I'm looking forward to getting a signed copy.
I will.
Namaste to you.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. You're phenomenal. Your interview was great. Thank you very much for having me. Thanks a lot.